Okay, so we are here today to talk about how to actually lose weight in 2023. Now, many people in this group, I've done polls and I found that people know somewhat how to lose weight. They especially know how to get started. That's usually not the biggest inhibiting factor in creating long-term sustainable weight loss. It's usually to do with mentality. So if we're going to have more success in the year to come than we have in the past, if we're going to get out of the cycles of failure and rebound and all that, then most of the changes that we can make, the biggest bang for our buck is going to happen on the level of mindset. So today I'm going to go through ways that in any year or any time we can massively increase our chances of having success. So yes, if you've failed at losing weight in the past, but you still want to try again, good. I commend your bravery, but we do need to do some things differently this time. So the first recommendation I have, and let's see, how many people do we have in the chat before? I think we only have 2 people here. If you're here, can you say hi in the comments? And if somebody wouldn't mind posting in the actual invite, because some people might be going there. Kelly Berry, Wes, Alicia, Sandra. All right, well, we've got a few people. All right, it's good to know some people are here. Mickey. All right, oh, and I didn't mention, but at the end, I will try to open it up to some Q&A. We'll start with Q&A specifically about the topic, and then we can try to do, more general questions. Susie Dunnington is trying to send me a Facebook message. Okay, sorry, I'm a bit flustered. This stuff really makes me mad because I tried so hard to get this all. Oh, wait. Oh, check this out. Oh, wait, hold on. Where'd it go? Oh, there I am. All right. Now it's complete. Now you can see me talking to you. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. Tip number 1 is to avoid extreme tactics. Now, this is a really, really common response to, especially when you've had a long-standing difficulty with losing weight. There's, the older you get, the more desperate you are for change, the longer you've suffered. It's natural to want an extreme solution to an extreme problem, but that's really not how we solve big problems. We don't usually find big solutions. We find the small fundamental solutions and we stack them end on end, day after day. And this is how we create, massive change. It's all baby steps. So the first point is to realize that the impulse, the impetus to, going on an extreme diet or making extreme changes or trying to get things done as fast as possible is often a response to shame. And it's not actually your best judgment on how to make sustainable change. So the first thing I want you to do in 2023 is really pay attention to the decisions you're making and ask yourself, am I doing this out of a sense of shame or desperation? Or am I doing this out of, am I being the captain of my ship and making good decisions that are going to benefit me 6 months, a year from now? One of the ways we can differentiate between the two is to fully accept the weight we're at. It's tough, like if you're 400 pounds and you feel like you'd be healthier at 170, that's a lot of weight to lose. It feels like a huge job. It can really get in your head. I don't have to explain that to anybody here. But when you accept the weight you're at now, when you say, I weigh 400 pounds, what it also does is it prevents you from spending any energy fighting that reality. and allows you to use your energy toward, you know, making changes. But if you can accept the outcome of your actions in the past, you can accept the actions in the past, which means you can learn from them. You can look at, you know, our weight is like a stock price, right? It's constantly fluctuating, but it's based on a number of factors. This is what I teach clients, that if we wanted to invest in a stock, we would learn about the CEO. We would learn about any geopolitical things going on. We'd want to know the main 5 or 6 factors that are going to lead to that stock price being higher or lower. And then we would do our best to, in our case with weight loss, influence those factors. And acceptance is how we kind of open up the map and really take stock of what's actually going on and connect to it in a way that actually allows us to make assertive changes based on our values. Come on. Why aren't you? There we go. So we don't want to start with changes that are big or fast or right or all-encompassing. Forget about all those value-driven or normative ideas about how weight loss should be. You know, an example of a big change would be saying like, oh, I'm going to go on an extreme diet, or I'm going to cut out an entire food group, or I'm going to an all-encompassing change, right? Would be, let's say you're a smoker and you think, well, I'm going to change my whole life January 1st. Generally speaking, that's not a great approach, because it just doesn't work for people, because the more changes you're making at any given time, the less likely you are to be able to keep any one of those changes going in the long run. So, you know, if you have some bad habits and you want to lose weight, have bad habits and lose weight. There's nothing about, you know, being a smoker for another little bit that's going to massively alter your health outcomes, right? Any bad habits that you have, any unhealthy habits that you want to change, you don't have to do it all at once, right? That can be it can be a big impediment, and people just making progress with weight loss and keeping it easy. So that is the key here. Start with the easiest changes, not the biggest, not the right changes, not the changes that anybody told you. The easiest changes are the changes that you identify in your life. You take stock, you look at the main factors in what is keeping you inactive or what's keeping you at a high caloric intake. And you just move the pieces that want to move the most easily. And this allows you to start making progress. Is it enough? I mean, if you don't think that way, right? Because if you start making these little easy changes, even if they don't seem like enough on their own, what they do is they allow you to start having new experiences, getting little wins, and success breeds success. So you have new experiences, you can actually start learning new things. And as you learn more and experience more, the next steps will be revealed. All of a sudden, if you do something simple like, oh, I don't really need to snack, I'm fine with, you know, I can just have more meals in the day. And if that cuts out a couple hundred calories for you, great. The easier the change, the more likely you are to sustain it. And most people go making these massive wholesale changes to their diet, when if they actually just kind of cleaned up some of the easy wins, then they would take a lot of ground and start losing weight. And then over time, after they've had more success, they would change their relationship to some of these other aspects of their eating or their behavior that maybe weren't, were a little bit more stuck, and maybe now can kind of come loose, and they are the next easy step. And in this way, you can just keep taking easy steps that are relatively the same ease to you, but allow you to progress to where you're at a rate of weight loss that you like, and is going to get you where you need to go. Why does this thing not work? Come on. Okay. My third tip is to embrace resistance training from the start. Now, how we do that, obviously you can go to the gym, you can work out at home. There's a lot of different techniques that people of size can employ to do this safely. Here's the thing, if you are really heavy, you are carrying around a lot of resistance with you all the time. So it actually, in some ways, is easier once somebody points out the technique. But generally speaking, I want you to embrace resistance training. And it's not just because it's going to spare muscle mass. It's going to help you keep your lean mass as you lose weight. One of the biggest reasons is that it helps us get in the mindset that we are making slow, deliberate changes to our body. And that this is about a brighter future where we're getting stronger and better and faster to actually live life more, rather than just trying to hit a number on the scale or get smaller. Right. And this is helpful, especially after I lost my big weight and I really focused on putting on muscle, I came to appreciate how, at the beginning, your strength gains and muscle gains are pretty quick. But then after a while, it gets to be this slower march. And there's kind of a beautiful aspect to that where it's like, okay, I'm doing this every day because I really like making my body stronger, not just for now, but, I'm putting muscle in the bank for when I'm 80 and the natural forces of mortality cause my body to decline. At least I'll be declining from a much, much stronger place, and I'll be able to enjoy old age, if I'm lucky enough to see it, that much more. And so that's why resistance training is just a really great habit to get into for your mentality. It helps you, approach weight loss from the sense of like, I'm trying to change how well I take care of my body for me. So speaking of for me, this is the tough one. This is the one where you're going to start screaming at your computer screen. This one makes people so uncomfortable, especially the people who kind of gravitate toward me. They tend to be givers. They tend to be very generous of spirit. They tend to be people pleasers. They tend to be caretakers, by nature. But before we get into all that, I just want to point out there's a big mistake that people make when they go to make weight loss a priority. They often do it without making themselves a priority. And I know that may not sound like it makes sense, but if you start to think about it, I think you'll see it everywhere, where someone goes on a diet or exercise program in order to get something that they think they need to be okay. And so they're always working and striving for being loved enough or being good enough, rather than having that state be the thing that drives them. Right. So obviously that's a bigger conversation about how we, learn to love ourselves and how to accept love as the prime mover of the things that we do for ourselves. But really right here, all we're talking about is, listen, if I'm going to try to lose weight in 2023 or any year or any time, if I'm going to try to lose weight, weight loss is not the priority. I am the priority. My well-being. Weight loss does not exist outside of my well-being. And a lot of people have a hard time getting their head around that because they're so used to, they show up at work and they're working outside of their well-being, right? Their job performance, they feel like, well, my well-being depends on my job. So I've got to, here's job and here's well-being down here, right? And if we do the same thing with weight loss, we really set ourselves up for a bad time, because we're going to start to make decisions that don't align with our well-being. And if the more we do that, the more we're going to encourage breakdown. So yeah, you can't make it a priority if you're unwilling to make you the priority. So when I tell people to be selfish, usually what they see is this sort of this spectrum with them on one side and, selfishness moving them toward the other side of the screen. I wonder if you can see my cursor. I guess you can't. Oh, maybe you can. Right. So if you can see my arrow, here's you, and I'm telling you to be selfish, right? To move this way. And you're afraid that that's going to make you a total psycho, an unredeemable monster. But that's not actually what's going to happen, right? You could be way more selfish, way more concerned about your well-being over the well-being of others, or certain responsibilities you have, or certain, at least the way it's built up in your head. Because here's what's actually going to happen. You're not going to instantly become a bad person. You're actually in an unhealthy place as it stands right now, where through your relationship to your responsibilities, the people you care for, the people you feel the need to please, we're over here in a state of control, where we're trying to make sure we stay safe via how much we take care of everybody else before we take care of ourselves. And so there's a lot of that we can let go of. And I see this constantly with clients, where it's not about, oh, we're going to take the children and drop them off at the fire station and then go move to Vegas. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being selfish in such a way that you're actually pursuing what you truly want deep down. So most of us don't want to totally shirk our responsibilities deep down, because we have responsibilities to people and institutions that we care about deeply. What being selfish in practice really looks like is moving more toward that middle ground, where we're living in a healthy, balanced manner. We're not becoming bad people. We're actually becoming better versions of ourselves. So yeah, it's not about don't feed the family. It's just maybe your meal prep comes first. Your recipes, the groceries you want to buy, the groceries you don't want to buy, the stuff you don't want in your house. It could be things like actually making that doctor's appointment that you've been putting off, or a dentist appointment. That's one I'm particularly guilty of. Not this year. I've been to the dentist a lot this year. But yeah, we're putting your well-being first. Your walks, your gym time, meditation time, sleep, whatever it is, right? If you aren't going to put it first, no one else is going to do it for you. And as my client Rosemary said one time, we were talking about this general topic. She had this brilliant line. She said, "Givers have to set boundaries because takers never do." And this is so brilliant. I love that. She said I could use it for a podcast episode or something, which maybe I will. But the idea there is, we're not talking about, obviously kids they're not trying to be soul-sucking, takers. They're just children, and that's the nature of being a child, is they're dependent on others. But generally speaking, we can get the kids fed and keep the partner happy, and play our role in our life, and pull back on a lot of the energy and other things that we're spending to sort of keep the wheels turning, when we don't really have to do that. Putting yourself first won't leave your loved ones in dire straits. Doing so will make you a better friend, partner, coworker, caregiver, and provider. Most of you out there who are struggling with weight also feel like they're letting themselves down in many areas of life. And it's easy to feel like this is indicative of a general failure on your part, or a general overwhelm. And sometimes we're overwhelmed because we're trying to control things that we can never control. We're trying to control people and their emotions, and we'll never control that. We can't control the events of the world. These things should be never more clear. So this gets us to the next logical point, which is how we take back time and money, right? I think most people would be astonished to know that they have the courage and the strength and everything they need to make the massive life changes that they want. They're just misplacing those qualities in other areas of life where they're not designed to be, and these are two really big examples: time and money. And we could, within time and money, I think we can encapsulate a lot of just our general energy and effort, right? Nothing will change in your weight and health if it doesn't first change with time and or money. How you spend your time and how you spend your money are direct reflections of what you value, whether it's your well-being or it's some mechanism of control. So we're going to take back money and time from places where they are being misused or misapplied. So now this gets us into, the common weight loss questions that people ask versus the kinds of questions that actually spur long-term change. So should I do keto? Better question is, why am I doing half of Karen's job for her? Right? How have I gotten suckered into spending so much time and energy doing other people's jobs for them because they're acting helpless, or if they don't do it, no one will. So I've got to pick up the slack. Oftentimes we are reenacting old stories from childhood. How many steps a day for weight loss? Great question. But a better question is, why am I trying to buy love with gifts? Why am I trying to make sure that people won't leave me by running around wasting a bunch of time and money that's not going to actually, at the end of the day, change the nature of our relationship? Difficult questions to ask yourself, even more difficult to answer. Which foods should I avoid? I think a better question is, which people should we avoid, right? There are people, we all know those emotional vampires, those people who, most of the people I work with, they've often had, some kind of narcissistic person in their life that can just really suck the soul out of them and create codependent relationships. The kind of person where you don't want to accept a gift because you're afraid that, like, oh man, if they're giving me a cake, they're going to expect 10 times, this in return, right? So these are the kinds of relationships that we want to examine closer and renegotiate the boundaries of. And again, as you do this, it will elucidate stories that you've been playing out since childhood, which it's a more complex topic in how we let those go, but that is one of the fundamental keys to having lasting change. So generally speaking, you can start this journey by asking yourself, where am I overworking or overspending to make sure that the sun will rise and set, right? A lot of times our spending is on kind of frivolous things. Hold on. Right? If you look back at 2022, just look back at the last year. And if you think about all the stuff that you bought, right? Now, some people aren't in great financial situations, but this is all relative, right? For some people, it might be a car or a, super expensive sound system. For other people, it might be, things that seemed basic at the time, seemed like necessities. But if they look back, they didn't actually need to buy it. And once they did buy it or spend money on it, it didn't actually fulfill that kind of hole inside of them that they were hoping it would. And then there's all, everybody is guilty to some extent of spending money to try to solve problems that don't exist. Like we mentioned, keeping people happy, keeping people in our lives, impulse buying, just buying stuff to try to you know what I'm talking about, retail therapy, right? So yeah, if you ask yourself, where am I overworking and overspending? Where am I doing other people's jobs for them? Where am I, trying to make sure that, look, maybe it's a child and you care about them, but you're actually trying to prevent them from having or experiencing difficulty in life. And if you pulled back, you would actually be allowing them to have experiences that would help them grow and be the person that they're trying to become. A lot of times when we pull back from other people, it's not that we're loving them less, it's that we're actually not suffocating them and allowing them to go through growth cycles that are very important for them, whether they're, 5 or 45. So one of the ways that we convince ourselves not to spend our time or money on ourselves, on our well-being, is that we're just not really open up to receiving help, to receiving the things that will make a difference. So for instance, I have a client, just talking to him yesterday. He's been working with me for a year. He's doing fantastic. And he just bought himself a treadmill that could go under his desk. He could afford it the whole time. The only difference was a mental shift. Like, why don't I let myself have this? Right. And it was something that was, medium expensive, nothing crazy, but, nobody wants to spend $500 if they can help it. But finally, plunked down $500 to make this purchase. And it's a huge value add for his health. And there's so many things like that where we'll spend $500 on a bill if it comes up, if an unexpected ticket, like I got a ticket the other day, $300, right? I didn't even know that I got a ticket. I was just driving. I thought school was out. So I was driving the normal speed. I went through a school zone, boom, $300, right? So I'll fork over $300 to the city government because I have to, and I'll just make the rest of my life work, right? But I know I would be very guilty of this as well. I would be way hesitant to spend $300 on something that's for my health, especially if this is an area where I failed in the past. And I'm afraid of, like, we're all afraid of wasting money, but when it comes to our health, we get in this negative feedback loop where we're afraid to spend money on our health because we failed at helping ourselves in the past. So now we're less likely to actually make the changes that are going to make a difference. And we have to get out of that. We have to get in the mindset that, no, I am the most important thing. I cannot help anyone if I am not functioning. I cannot help anyone if I'm not, being my most abundant, most vital self. I'll just speak from my own experience as well. There's I don't talk about it a ton, but I have, some pretty severe mental health issues that I've tried to treat through pharmaceuticals and, all kinds of therapy and EMDR. But, it's getting to the point where if insurance won't cover this certain, it's not procedure, what do you call it? I don't know, it's a medical intervention thing, gonna zap my brain, but it costs like $10,000. And of course I want to put that off. But the question is, like, what's more important than my health? Am I gonna really impact, like, I can't help as many people if my brain isn't working right. So what's the return on investment if I plunk down this insane amount of money on getting my brain zapped? That's not the technical term for it, but you get the idea. The return on that is that it's going to massively increase my earning capacity. It could increase my lifespan, quite frankly. And it could make me a better, provider, a better partner, a better teacher, a better coach all around. So instead of feeling like, oh, we're wasting money, we're throwing money away, we have to really get in the mindset of investment. And oftentimes this takes the form of opening up to help in general, right? A lot of us, we desperately need help and we go looking for solutions. But if somebody showed up and said, hi, I'm here to help you, we would go, oh no, and maybe it's a self-worth thing. Maybe it's just a shyness or something. But there's all kinds of mental blocks that will just show up and tell us not to be open. And I'll get into the reasons for that. But yeah, we get this feeling that we shouldn't be heavy to begin with. And we feel lots of, complicated feelings about that. There's a big social stigma around it. The feeling that, oh, if I just had good character, that I could sort this out, right? You don't have a character issue. You have in some cases, a severe medical issue that, yes, it's the product of mental health and, decisions that you made that maybe weren't the best decisions. But at this point now, right, not all of it was the result of you and like some lower quality of character or strength. People don't become heavily overweight because they're bad people. It's often because there's conflicts inside of them that keep them from making the decisions that most easily align with their deepest values. This is something that's broken and needs healing. And if you broke your leg, you wouldn't sit there with the bone sticking through the skin going, you know what, if I was just a bit more disciplined, this wouldn't happen. Well, it did happen. And you deserve to get help, any help that you feel is appropriate. I mean, think about it. The broken leg is a pretty extreme scenario, but most of us wouldn't even cut our own hair. Like I do, obviously, because I don't have hair, but most other people wouldn't cut their own hair because it's just not something that we would do for ourselves because we don't have the angles, right? Even if you could reach and you're doing guesswork, you need someone to have your back, right? So why not get help with major life changes if that's what's appropriate for you? There is no better use of your money than getting your health in a better place. And as I mentioned before, you can think back to all the money you've spent in the past. How much of that would you trade if you could have a different health outcome now? If you could go back in time and tell yourself, however long ago it would be to make a big difference, here are the things that we could not spend money on. And guess what? They're not going to fill the need that we're trying to fill with them. They're not going to actually get us the love or the respect that, like if it's having a nice car so that people will respect you, that's not going to do it. Making sure I overextend myself on a mortgage to have some dream home with a picket fence to, create this image that I've been trying to pursue my whole life. That doesn't ultimately do it. Whether it's just spending too much money on this or that, whatever it is, big or small, those things add up big time. And if you start to take back your money, you will have a much easier time when it comes to taking back your energy, taking back people pleasing, taking back, really unhealthy boundaries. And we can talk about that maybe more in further Facebook Lives. I plan to do a few of these in December. So yeah, stop spending money to fill in the empty places. Instead, use it, invest it, and get whatever help or tools you need to create wholeness, because you deserve it. And you're going to be so much more and give so much more to the world if you put yourself first and start doing it pretty boldly. And opening up, one of the biggest things that keeps us from doing it, you think, well, why wouldn't I open up to help? I desperately need help. Well, it's because opening up to help is kind of a vulnerable act. And most of us who have dealt with severe weight issues, we don't like feeling vulnerable. We are pretty scared because we've been burned a lot of times. We've been massively hurt, abused, neglected. And opening up to help kind of can feel like opening up to the potential to be hurt again. But like I said, if you make decisions based off of your values and not your shame, like we mentioned in the very first slide, you're going to start to see that you have the ability to open up to the right people, the right places, find the right, if you have a medical issue, to find the right provider for that, right? Whatever it is, if you need to go back to the dentist, you find the right dentist, the one who's going to treat you right, and it's worth making those calls or going on a couple of visits to have that part of your life sorted. So yeah, being open to lasting transformation is more than just putting yourself in a place where you deserve help, right? It's also about getting yourself out of the constant psychological habit of trying to identify dangers on the horizon so you can avoid them, right? We become very avoidant of a ton of things in life when we are operating out of fear, especially fear of the unknown. Because guess what? If you're going to lose a massive amount of weight in the year to come, you are going to live a different sort of life than you've been living. And that is fundamentally going to be scary to a part of your brain that always will prefer the status quo over anything new. Why? Because the status quo hasn't killed us yet. So the survival mind says, I want that above everything. And it's an amazing part of our species, of our makeup, but it's also kind of dumb. And it will keep you very, very stuck. And it will seemingly do it for the most important reason of all, which is survival. One of the ways we get out of that is by being more focused on opportunity, the potential for wins and growth, right? And we can't do that if we're constantly scanning the horizon for potential dangers to avoid, because this is how we take the map of the possibilities in our world and we just darken huge parts of it and say, oh, I can't go there because that reminds me of this time in life. That reminds me of this time I failed, right? So the more we can open up to change, really, the more we're opening up to possibilities and to new routes that we'll be able to travel. So now I'm going to open it up to some Q&A. Let's see if you guys have any questions. We'll start with questions specifically about the topic that we've been talking about today, kind of some of the mental limitations we have that if we don't address going into a weight loss program, that we're really setting ourselves up for failure. So if you have questions about these mindset things, I'll answer those first, but then we can open it up to some more general, getting started with weight loss Q&A, because I'll kind of take your questions and use that to decide how I'm going to, what I'll talk about in the coming weeks, because I do plan on doing this more often. If I can get Zoom and Facebook to freaking work with me. Okay, I'm having trouble seeing the comments. Man, it's not showing me all the comments. It's saying there's 17, but I'm only seeing 4 of them. Come on now. 18 comments. All right. Yeah, thanks, Cassandra. Yeah, I can see the newer ones. I can't see the older ones. Why aren't you showing me? Here, can you say hi in the comments? Well, no, that's replaying the, I don't want it to replay the video for me. Good grief. So if you can ask me specific questions, that'll help me answer you, because I'm seeing people kind of putting some stuff down there. All right, Cassandra's helping me out. We'll get this figured out. Okay, so Jen Hanks mentions that happiness comes from chocolate, not the broccoli. So I assume you're asking, how do I how do I disentangle my happiness from food? I think the first place to start is ask yourself, does chocolate really make you happy? And if it does, what's the context, right? So if chocolate makes you happy, we have to ask, what's making you unhappy to begin with? Because if you're being put in a situation, if you're in a corner where I have to do something that's going to ultimately hurt me in order to help me, then you're at the far end of a series of disadvantageous situations and places where you've been given an option and you just constantly feeling like you have to pick a disadvantageous option. This is just part of what our survival minds do, right? Because we're always picking the status quo over freedom. Now this gets into, the topic of emotional eating, which is a whole other kettle of fish. It's a huge portion of my coaching. Without a very specific question, I don't know exactly what to say on that, because it is something I could talk about for hours. But I think one of the things I'd recommend is doing what I call, being the 4-year-old, asking yourself why. So when you get home at the end of the day and you're stressed and you want to have a healthy dinner, a nice protein, some veggies, whatever else. And then you also have this growling demon come up from the depths and be like, give me chocolate. You can just ask why. Now, here's the thing about the voices in our heads. They won't shut up. So we can actually use that to our advantage. You just start asking why, like an annoying kid. Why do I need chocolate right now? Like, okay, we want it, but why do I need it? Why do I have to have it at the expense of other things? And you wait till you hear answers. And those answers will come. And then you say, but why? Why? Okay, I'll eat the chocolate, but first I just want to see your work, right? You got to be that math teacher who's like, yeah, maybe the answer is 5, maybe it's not, but I need to know that you didn't just accidentally give me the right answer. I need to see the way you got there. And so if you make these voices show their work, they will eventually show you the larger apparatus that's keeping you stuck. And the reason why you can't be happy with broccoli and you have to keep yourself unhappy with chocolate, because that's really what we're doing at the end of the day. Any other questions? Wes mentions dealing with shame and setbacks. This gets us into the topic of failure and our relationship to failure, right? If you take the attitude that there's no such thing as failure, you're going to be less impacted by failures. So when I teach that awareness is what drives change, not trying to change or trying to be more in control. I don't believe that those things even really exist. At least not to the degree that people try to lean on them. But if you can change your relationship to setbacks, right? Let's say that you're trying not to eat the chocolate at the end of the day, right? Now, if you are relying on control and prediction, you're relying on things that you don't control and things that you can't predict, right? I don't know exactly when those cravings are going to hit me. And so it takes you more off guard when they do. Whereas if you're constantly allowing yourself to create awareness around the last time that you ate the chocolate, you can actually learn more about what was going on inside of you. And the next time it happens, I'm not saying that the next time you're going to be like, oh no, I'm good, right? This is more of a process, but we can't grow if we can't learn. It's like I said at the beginning of this presentation, take the easy steps, because that allows you to take steps and learn from them and actually be in a process. Most of us won't allow ourselves to be in process because we won't allow failure. We won't allow a setback. So a setback isn't just a setback, it's permission to quit, right? Because a setback, if it was just a setback, we wouldn't be talking about this. Everybody has setbacks in everything that's worth doing, right? But what we're talking about is something that happens where our brains just shut off and say, I quit, right? And if you can say like, listen, I'm allowed to fail. If I'm going to eat the chocolate, I'm going to eat the chocolate. Take the power away from the failure and instead put your power into learning and your ability to, you have a big, smart brain and it can see everything that you're doing if you let it. And it will start to make better decisions automatically. Will that piece of advice right there instantly solve emotional eating? No, we need to talk about more in-depth things. But yeah, I'd say changing your relationship to failure to where you allow it and you celebrate it, because that's how you learn, right? And if you start to take that approach, you're going to be increasing your awareness every time that chocolate, wants to whisper in your ear. And you'll be more aware and more able to see what's happening as everything's going down. And the biggest impediment to that is often shame. So, Wes has been with me for a year, so he knows that shame is the thing that will stop us from having awareness of what we've just done. It will say, oh, this is so terrible, you're not allowed to look at it, right? Oh, it's so terrible, you're not allowed to be here as you eat the chocolate. You're not allowed to be here and be aware of what's happening as you hurt yourself. You have to be blind to that. And it doesn't make any sense, because if you're really, really hurting yourself, then you absolutely deserve to see it. If you're letting yourself down, you absolutely deserve to see it. It's like, it's using the language of like, oh, you've made such a big mistake. But literally nowhere else in life is that the response to when you make a mistake. Everything else in life is built so that you are made aware of your mistakes. Like I got a ticket the other day for driving too fast through a school zone, right? I needed to be more aware that, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to pick up my kid. So in my mind, school's over, but in this school's still in session, right? So that awareness right there is going to save me in the future, because apparently they've set up some kind of robot ticket giver. And so if I don't remember that the next time around, I'm going to be getting another ticket. Okay, let's see. Taisekwa, I just feel really lost. When you look at naturally thin people, they are not avoiding, planning, or juggling food. They just do it right. I want that. I want to learn that. I'm so exhausted of having to live abnormally to lose weight. Great question or statement. Because yeah, I have a client right now, and she came to me really stuck in this place. She would get angry going through the supermarket, seeing people buying, crap and whatever. And these aren't necessarily people who are fit or healthy. She's just mad that they get to have like the freedom to just buy and hurt themselves with whatever they want. And I think we've all looked at people who are naturally thin and thought, I want that. Why can so-and-so eat that and I can't? And it's tough. That's a really impoverished way of looking at things. And really, I think inside of that is kind of a latent self-hatred or feeling that we have done something wrong. And so we look at the naturally thin people and we see good people. And in some ways, and this might not apply to everybody, but I think enough people it does apply that it's worth mentioning. I can't say for sure how this affects you, Taisekwa, but if you saw people walking by you on the street and you weren't able to walk, you could have all sorts of feelings about that. You could feel legitimately bad for yourself. You could feel angry. You could feel disappointed at the lot you've been given. But at the end of the day, if you are on the ground, not able to walk because something's broken, it's not going to get better by focusing on the capabilities of other people. It's going to get better if you actually accept that something is broken, and then bit by bit seek to find the care and the healing that you need. Because, your healing does not exist in the capabilities of other people. Your healing exists inside of your potential, and it starts with accepting what's broken. And so I think that it can be really distracting when we see other people and their behavior and like, oh, why can they buy that or eat that and I can't? We're getting ourselves way on the wrong foot because we're trying to paint ourselves into a sort of poverty. And those mentalities just tend to proliferate and spread like wildfire through everything else in our brain. So if you have an emotion that says like, oh, I'm really jealous of this naturally thin person, sit with that. Actually ask yourself, why are they naturally thin? And what about me is different? Is it really that I'm not a good enough person? The people I work with, it's usually because they didn't get a chance to develop psychologically the way a naturally thin person does. Because a naturally thin person is not just thin. They're a person who has a relationship with food where they can eat till they're satiated, and then it's not a big deal anymore, right? But if you've grown up in a situation where you didn't have that same psychologically safe, nurturing environment, not only could you develop different issues, kids have access to food. They don't have access to heroin and all these other drugs of abuse, but kids have access to food at some level. And so it's very, very human. It's very natural to, in response to an impoverished childhood situation, to respond to it with getting to be kind of obsessive about food, and to associate food with safety, and to thereby think about it a lot more. One of the things that's really cool to see with coaching clients is how they, I was thinking of one person in particular who was just really kind of driven crazy by the amount that she thought about food in a day. And by actually kind of working through the beliefs and the life stories that were behind that, in pretty short order, she was able to not have a bunch of food thoughts. And now she knows that if she's starting to think about food a ton, she knows, okay, hold on. What's actually going on is that I've lost a sense of security in X, Y, or Z. And she can attend to that, right? Because if you just try to not think about food, you're just going to keep thinking about whatever you're focusing on. And this is why, generally speaking, when it comes to changing our mindsets, we can't try to get rid of a mindset, because then you're just focusing on that mindset and you're going to recreate whatever you're focusing on. We have to have something new as our North Star. And this is why it's important to be vulnerable, because that's the only way you're going to open the door to things that will actually give you that, North Star, that thing to anchor yourself to, that you're saying, I'm not just giving up this, I'm pursuing this. And that will put you in a much more powerful position. When you're mad that other people have what you don't have, you're trying to resist your lack. You're trying to resist the fact that you don't have something. Whereas if you kind of forget about what other people have and you just think about what you are pursuing, that will oddly help you get out of that trap. What to do when you hit a plateau? There's so much discourse on that that it's hard to know what's best. So yeah, when you hit a plateau, number one, plateaus often aren't plateaus. We often, it's a lot of it's mental, that something slowed down, and maybe we were experiencing a really fast rate of weight loss, and we're super happy with it. And then you start going, okay, if I'm losing this amount of weight per week, I'm going to be at this goal by this date. We start extrapolating all these arbitrary numbers and quotas and all this stuff. And then if weight loss slows down to a maybe more normal rate, we start to fret and think that, oh no, this ideal future I've cooked up for myself now isn't possible. So I have to fix this. Ultimately, a plateau is something you have to fix, right? And if you need to fix a plateau, then you're in the wrong mindset completely, right? You don't need to fix anything. Your body's telling you what you need to hear. Generally speaking, if a plateau is happening, and it does happen, right? Especially if you've lost a lot of weight, this can happen because of hormonal reasons. It can happen because being in a calorie deficit for a sustained period of time is not optimal for your hormone production. It's not optimal for your mental health. It's not optimal for your energy expenditure, right? If you're in a prolonged calorie deficit, even if you feel good and you're being overall successful and mentally you feel good, it can slowly sap your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which for most people is the second biggest calorie burner in the day, apart from their basal metabolic rate. So, and this happens beneath your cognition, beneath your notice, where you don't even realize the extent to which you're moving around less, you're fidgeting less. So one of the ways to deal with plateaus is to recognize that your body is kind of shutting things down without letting you know. And so you have to be more conscious of your steps and your daily activity. And this is one of the places where step counting really comes in handy, because it is a pretty good proxy for overall daily activity. So, it sounds really simple, but people who use those standing desks and stuff like that, that can actually be a really effective way to help yourself when your body's kind of trying to conserve calories. You work standing up, you take phone calls on your feet, you just do a bit more stuff where you're moving around, and that can help offset that. If you're truly in a plateau and your body is just kind of had it, take a break. Let your hormones rebalance. Go back to caloric maintenance. Focus more on resistance training. Say, all right, I'm not going to be losing pounds on the scale right now. I'm gonna eat a little bit more than I have been, and I'm going to train as hard as I can. Use that time where you're in maintenance to really put on as much muscle and strength as you can. And that will help your hormonal environment as well, because exercise is still very good. And if you've been doing a lot of walking or a lot of cardio, maybe you can bring that down a notch, right? You can always bring your calories up a bit and bring your activity down a notch to where you find a nice happy medium. And yeah, generally speaking, without getting into the specifics of any one person, because it would differ a little bit depending on what the person's been doing to lose weight. Yeah, taking a break is generally what's required. Now, some people, they take a break for 2 weeks and they feel better and they can start losing again. From what I've heard from scientists who I look up to and trust, that generally speaking, if you've been on a prolonged, like months of calorie deficit, you probably need to go on at least a couple months of rest, a third to half of the time that you spent in a calorie deficit to get back up to where all your levels are normal. Now, if someone is, still morbidly, dangerously obese to where it's going to impact their quality of life and whatever, that's a personal decision. The cost benefit of, hey, are my hormones the tippy top? Well, maybe they're not, and I'm still fine with jumping back in, as long as I can lose the weight and feel happy and really be putting myself first that whole time. I think that's the best way to deal with the plateau. Oh, good, Taisekwa, good. All right, well, I think that's all the questions I see for now. Let me just double check from. Oh, yeah, sorry, Cass. The question I skipped was Cassandra's. If you guys don't know, Cassandra is my virtual assistant, and I think she's going to be a coaching client pretty soon, but for right now, she's assisting me and she's helping me. Oh, you're welcome, Jennifer. I hope it was helpful. Sometimes it's hard to answer questions when I can't like see if it's resonating with the other person. But yeah, so how do you want to go for a walk in the morning? Great question. It's sort of like in so many ways, the way I deal with this with clients is kind of a inverse other side of the coin of how we deal with how do I not want chocolate, right? I mean, we can't like fully turn off your desires. I would say accept. So first off, accept that you don't want to walk in the morning. Sounds bizarre, but try it out. Wake up in the morning, and if you actually sit there with the feeling of I don't want to walk, it allows so many cool things to happen. You realize, oh, when I get up in the morning, I'm actually in a debate over whether I should walk. So part of my resistance to walking is I'm exhausted by being in this argument over whether or not I'm going to go for a walk. And you realize that a lot of that argument is value laden, like, oh, I should go for a walk. I need to go for the walk. My health depends on it, but I'm tired. And oh man, what's wrong with me that I won't even just go for a walk? And then you start to erode your sense of self-worth and self-love. And it's just exhausting. And this just absolutely will crumble us like a wave hitting a sandcastle first thing in the morning. Whereas if you shut off the conversation and you wake up in the morning and you actually just sit there, right? Sit up on the side of your bed and take some deep breaths and ask yourself, okay, do I want to walk? If the answer is no, genuinely, then don't walk. But what you might find is that the answer is yes, and there's a lot of other noise. Okay, so I'm going to honor the yes, and I'm going to try to block out the noise. And it only takes like 2 minutes, right? Because it takes the amount of time it takes for you to get your shoes on and get out the door. And then you're walking. And then these things usually take care of themselves. And if you're, for some reason, just like really hating the walk, even though you want to like it, right? You can stop anytime. And you keep your brain from saying, oh, I have to go on a walk that's 20 minutes or else it doesn't count. Nope. 2 steps counts, right? Because all we're doing is taking baby steps. We're taking the easy step. And so what you can teach yourself, if you get your shoes on, get out the door, and go for a walk like down the block and back, what you've taught yourself is that it doesn't hurt anything to put on our shoes and go outside. We're not agreeing to some grueling workout. We're just agreeing to that. We're keeping it simple. We're putting on our shoes, we're going outside. We're letting simple things stay simple without our brain having to complicate it. And you're also proving to yourself that, oh, I can walk down to the end of the block and back. And then the next day, you wake up and your brain is going to be more interested in walking. Why? Because you gave it an experience. And our brains are always looking to improve on experiences. Well, I walked yesterday. Maybe I can walk a little bit further today. There's going to be a little bit more of an innate impulse to move. And it happens when we lessen the conversation. It's sort of like having a garden, right? Imagine you opened up your garden every morning and just let 50 people walk in, and they're walking all over the garden, right? Our motivation is like these little plants that are trying to grow, but we allow people in combat boots to come stomp around our garden every morning. Keep your garden safe. Keep everyone out as much as you can, because what you're actually doing by lessening the conversation, either I'm going to do it or I'm not. You could actually wake up every morning and say, I'm not going to work out and I'm not going to have a conversation about it. And in so many ways, that would actually help your innate motivation grow to where you could see it. And so sometimes, I don't believe we should be avoidant of these things. I really do believe we should give ourselves experiences whenever possible. I'm just saying that this is the role that keeping our brains quiet can have, just by not getting suckered into the argument. That's mostly how we can keep the people out. And you can just sit with yourself and say, am I going to go for the walk today? Yep, I'm going to do it. Or nope, I don't have it. Right. And this is why having a coach can really help, because you can say, hey, I'm not going for my walk, even though I want to. And they can help kind of hold that space with you as you figure out how to say yes so that you can give yourself new experiences. So yeah, really take the image of a garden and a little green shoot poking up out of the ground. That's your motivation. A lot of times people look at that and they go, it's not enough. Well, it's not enough because you aren't nurturing it. You're not protecting it from the rest of the junk in your brain. And it's constantly getting stomped out. So you're constantly without motivation. And so now you're looking at external things to try to get motivation from something on YouTube or from something on TikTok, right? Stop doing that. You don't get motivation from outside. Motivation only comes from the inside, right? Anything external is going to be temporary, or it's going to be conditional. And oftentimes it feels like motivation, but what we're really doing is putting ourselves in some mild version of fight or flight. And that also is going to stomp out our innate motivation. If we can protect our inner environment, this is another example of putting ourselves first. I don't care, whatever stresses, whatever, no, stay out of my garden. I'm going to watch these things grow. And guess what? They're not going to be some big, giant tree on day one. It's going to take time. But if I protect my motivation, I can allow it to grow. And yeah, if I need this tiny little sapling of motivation to be this huge, fruitful tree, I'm just going to end up ruining it. I'm going to crush the baby bird if I try to control its growth. Again, all our power comes from our passivity, not action. Almost all of our power comes from just being willing to let things happen. So I hope that was helpful. We're over an hour. So we ended up having a nice long chat today. I hope this was helpful. Next weekend, I'm thinking of doing another one on Saturday, kind of talking about counting calories and, the pros and cons of counting calories. And if time permitting, maybe we can get into some more like mechanical questions. So yeah, look for that invite maybe tomorrow or the next day. I think this went well. Overall, still, I don't know why the stinking call didn't go straight into the invite like it was supposed to. I set all this up beforehand. Ugh. But yeah, I hope this was helpful. Thanks, Taisekwa. Thanks, Jen. Thank you, Shanice. Thank you, Wes. And thank you very much, Cassandra. All right, well, until next time, hopefully we'll see you next Saturday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, take care of yourselves.